Howard Marks is one of my favourite drug dealers. He's from Wales. He was born in the 40s, I believe, or 50s, possibly, I think. And he ended up stumbling into the world of drug dealing, ended up becoming one of the world's biggest drug dealers, and on the FBI's most wanted list. So I came across this guy when I read his book in prison. When it was one of the first books I read in prison. I was in Portland, and my cellmate at the time passed me the book after he finished reading it, and it's called Mr. Nice, and it's a fantastic book if anyone wants to read it. So what I'll do now is I'll just kind of review what I know about him, basically. So this is my own knowledge. I'm sorry if it's a little bit sketchy or if it's a little bit wrong, but this is Mr. Nice, Howard Marks. Unfortunately, he died in 2016 of cancer, but I got to meet him before that at a meet and greet down in Falmouth. He used to tour around the country doing sort of stage shows, talking about his life and his exploits, but then also doing kind of meet and greets afterwards, where you'd go and get to meet him. He'd sign a book for you, that sort of thing. And he was a really great guy. He had a fantastic personality, and I think that was one of the reasons he became such a fantastic drug dealer. It's just because he was such a likeable guy. He managed to fit in whatever circle he was in. So, I got this book when I was in Portland back in 2001, Mr. Nice. I started reading it. It's a great book, couldn't put it down. I read, cover to cover, at the earliest opportunity. And I think I might have read it again as soon as I'd finished reading it. It's just one of those books. It's just the stories he's got. So basically, he started off. He went to he managed to get into Oxford University. He was a smart guy back in the 60s. I think it was like 66, something like that. And managed to get into Oxford. He's studying, and he's lucky enough that the dorm room he's in is the one that's got the window that the bars come out of. So he's got basically the access to the parties. So lots of people come and go through his window, so they can get onto the dorm and go down to the party room, basically. So he gets invited down to the parties with all the other cool kids. Now, once he's down there, he starts sort of dabbling in drugs with them, and he ends up meeting this guy who brings in hash through Germany, and brings it into the country, and he's making tons of money doing it. One day, this guy, he gets caught and calls Howard over to Germany to go and speak to him. Now, like I say, he's been caught and he's in the police cell. He speaks to Howard on a visit and lets him know that there's another car, still full of hash, waiting to be going picked up. And if he goes and picks it up, then he can have the money, and it can be quite lucrative for him. So Howard agrees, and he goes and drives a car from Germany back to London. He delivers the hash he sells the hash, and then delivers the cash back to the suppliers. Now these guys, a Pakistani couple who are getting the hash from Afghanistan and Pakistan, and shipping it into the country, and they can create and gather as much hash as anybody needs. They can get as much as you need, as long as you can smuggle it into the country and sell it. So this becomes very attractive to Howard, who has a massive sort of circle of connections now through London, and he manages to move in sort of like massive shipments of hash. Gets getting more and more bold. He's getting multiple cars to come in. All the panels in the car and all the seats, all behind the seats, are all full of hash. And he gets 5, 6, 7 cars coming in at a time, filled with hash, and shipping it all over the country. So if you've smoked hash in the 60s or 70s in the UK, then it was probably Howard Marks who brought that in for you. Now, obviously, being a crook, he gets more and more greedy. He wants the bigger shipments. He wants the fame and notoriety. Him and his little missus become sort of well known around the West End of London. He opens up a boutique, selling clothes to all the fashionable types, and he ends up meeting an IRA guy called John McCann. Now, the reason he meets up with him is because he needs a way of getting it into the country that's more reliable than, coming in through cars and things, smuggling it in. You're limited to what you can do that way. So he meets up with this guy from the IRA called John McCann, who has got connections at the airport, who can basically look the other way as these parcels come through from Pakistan, full of the hash, and he basically tells the boys at the airport that there's guns for the for the cause. So turn a blind eye when these boxes come through, and Howard Marks manages to work with the IRA to get his hash through these Irish airports and bypass security. Because he starts working with the IRA, and he's bringing in all these massive shipments from Afghanistan, Lebanon, Pakistan, this sort of thing. He's making about 50 grand a time now. Back in the 60s, it's massive money he's making for all this importing. Because he's got such a network of criminals and the IRA on his team now. One of his old pals from Oxford, who just happens to be working for MI5 or MI6 now. Sorry, he's working for MI6, and he approaches Howard because they want as much information as they can on his circle of friends and his connections and things. And Howard agrees, because he wants to. It's pretty cool being a spy. But also, this gets him out of trouble as well. So, the MI6 agent says, if you ever need anything, give me a call on this number. Now, Howard expands his operation and he starts smuggling hash into America. And the way he does that is he uses the bands that are going on tour. So things like the Rolling Stones, any of the big bands at that time who were touring in the 60s and 70s were probably carrying Howard Marks hash in with their speakers and all the boxes and containers that follow people around on those on those world tours. And Howard Marks was stuffing the the boxes full of hash and using them to get all his drugs into America. Now, Howard only dealt in hash. He didn't want to deal in heroin or any of the harder stuff like that. So his circle was just made up of people who were shipping this hash. Now, occasionally people would drop out of his circle because they wanted to deal in the harder drugs once they got on there, once they started making money. So they would end up dropping out of his circle and things. People would come and go. Howard would have to take on a number of aliases. And I think he had something like 40 odd aliases. And that's where the Mr. Nice term came in the end, because he one of the passports he acquired was in the name of Mr. Nice. And he liked that. So, that was the name that he called his book as well. Obviously, when you get to this level of drug dealing, things start to go wrong. Shipments were starting to get found. Human error sometimes. I think one of them, the shipments, the guy who was on security that was supposed to, wave the parcel through, was sick that day. So the parcel got stopped at security and, searched. I think one time one of the boxes was accidentally left at the airport, and it was the box that obviously had the hash in it was accidentally left, and security opened it up and found it, and the hash was found. So it was just little things like this. You can't get lucky every time. So he eventually became quite well known, and the newspapers in the UK ended up putting him on the front pages, saying that because he went on the run and he was Howard Marks was hiding. So the front page newspapers were covering a story saying that they were worried that Howard Marks had been abducted by the IRA for being an MI6 spy. So this was disastrous for someone who wanted to be an international drug smuggler. These guys were supposed to be working in the shadows and the unknowns, and there he is being plastered all over the newspapers in your home country. So Howard quickly got himself in trouble. He was still trying to ship drugs around. It was becoming more and more of a tight circle as people were getting arrested. The net was closing in on him basically. He ended up getting caught in his villa in Mallorca, and like I say, people started grassing. People started getting, his lawyers were getting caught. Everyone in the operation got caught, basically. And the whole thing came crashing down around his ears. He ended up in prison in Spain, and then extradited over to America, where he spent a long time in federal prison, basically. I think he got quite a long sentence. I don't remember. I want to say 40 years, but that might sound too long. But he only ended up doing something like about 7. You know how American sentences are. So he only ended up doing about 7 years in prison. Now, because one of his co-defendants tried escaping when they were in a Spanish prison, he ended up on the kind of naughty list when he went to America, and they classed him as an escape risk. So he ended up doing a lot of time in solitary confinement, which obviously fucks with you quite a lot. But he did end up getting out there, and as you'll see in the film, Mr. Nice, with Rhys Ifans, if you ever want to watch it, it's a great film. It's a bit of a shortened story of it. The book is so much better, but the film's good also. So he starts to teach, because he's a smart guy, and obviously he's been through courses and courses. At Oxford, he spent many years there. Did quite well, and so he starts teaching the American criminals and the American defendants who are defending themselves how to basically word their defence and how to write their appeals and processes to actually best get off. And he starts giving legal advice and helping these guys with their education. He becomes a bit of a tutor, because obviously he was at Oxford. He was learning to become a teacher, him and his girlfriend. So he becomes a bit of a teacher in the American prisons, and he does very well. Again, like I say, he finally gets out, and they kick him out, and they send him back to the UK, and eventually, he's got no money now. All he's known since uni was he's had no real legitimate jobs. All he's been is a drug smuggler all his life. He's been banged up and stuck away in an American prison, for basically selling hash. It's only been illegal for a short amount of time. The rest of throughout history, it's been illegal. It's only been since the 30s, 40s, something like that. But it's been illegal. Now, Howard Marks is a massive campaigner for the legalization of cannabis and hash and associated products. He died in 2016, but until that point, he was quite well known for going into police stations and things, and lighting up a joint in their faces and seeing what they would do. And they'd quite often just kick him out, and just say, "Look, Howard, piss off. We've got better things to do than arrest you for lighting a joint." But yeah, in the UK, it is still illegal. Hopefully, in time, that it will, will follow Canada and follow other places in the world that are getting quite wise to how medicine and beneficial cannabis is. So he ended up doing on the old talking circuit, just doing stage shows and things for years, where you could go and meet him, and that's how I got to meet him in the end. And basically, that was one of the best days of my life. I got to meet one of my heroes, and after the show, he did a little meet and greet where I got to go and meet him and have a chat with him, and he signed one of my books. And I asked him what one of the most interesting things he bought with his money was, and he told me that he bought a mountain in Nepal, and obviously the idea was to to grow weed on it, and he called it Mount Potential. And I wonder whatever happened to that. Obviously he's died. His estate possibly passed on to children if he had them or whatever. But there was a mountain with unkept potential that's somewhere in the world. But I thought I'd just share the story today of my favourite drug smuggler, Mr. Howard Marks. And I urge you, if you haven't already, to go and watch Mr. Nice, the film, or read the book. It's a fantastic book. So Mr. Nice, please look him up if you haven't already. Thank you. Cheers.